What is the Greenbelt? A Greenbelt is a land use zone designation used in land use planning to control areas of largely natural, undeveloped, wild, or agricultural land surrounding or near urban areas. Countries with Greenbelts include Australia, Austria, Brazil, Canada, the Dominican Republic, France, Germany, Iran, Italy, New Zealand, Serbia, South Korea, Sweden, Thailand, the United Kingdom, and the United States of America. I'm sure you've heard about Ontario's Greenbelt by now. Ontario's Greenbelt is 2 million acres of protected land that provides fresh air and clean water. It also protects communities, farmland, forests, green space, watersheds and wetlands, preserves cultural heritage, and supports recreation and tourism in Ontario's Greater Golden Horseshoe. The Greater Golden Horseshoe is an urban area in southern Ontario with the biggest population growth in southern Canada, with around 11 million people. That's 29% of Canada's population. The Greenbelt came to be in 2005 when legislation was passed by Dalton McGuinty's government to establish the world's largest greenbelt, encompassing the Niagara Escarpment, Oak Ridges Moraine, and Deffin's Rouge Agricultural Preserve, which is adjacent to the Rouge National Urban Park, in total 2 million acres of excellent farmland and green space.
The Greenbelt provides food and employment for many Ontarians, while also serving as a natural solution to many problems in Ontario. There are both human and environmental benefits from the Greenbelt. The wetlands within the Greenbelt help control floods by absorbing surface water and then slowly releasing it, therefore helping to prevent droughts since there is a sustained water flow. The Greenbelt is also home to 78 endangered species and thousands of living organisms. Ontarians rely on the Greenbelt as a source of money and food. Over 177,000 Ontarians depend on the Greenbelt for full-time jobs. About 42% of Ontario's farmland is in the Greenbelt, and each acre in the Greenbelt earns 68% more revenue than the average Ontario farm. Overall, the Greenbelt contributes $9.6 billion annually to the economy. In addition, the Greenbelt is a very popular place for tourism and recreation. Every year, around 76 million people visit the Greenbelt. Tourists enjoy many activities, ranging from snowshoeing and cross-country skiing to biking. The Greenbelt is also a great natural solution to environmental problems like habitat loss and climate change. As cities grow larger, natural habitats become smaller. Being one of the most biodiverse ecosystems in Canada, it is home to thousands of different species. Furthermore, the Greenbelt offsets 71 million tons of carbon yearly. The Greenbelt truly is one of the most important parts of Ontario.
Green spaces improve physical and mental health. Going into nature reduces the risk of cancer, diabetes, and heart attacks. It also increases immunity, energy, fitness, weight loss, and vitamin D production. According to Conservation Ontario, with every 343 trees per square kilometre, child asthma rates go down 25%. They also report that if you have green space within 1 kilometre of your house, you're 30% less likely to suffer from anxiety and 25% less likely to suffer from depression. Going into nature releases endorphins, which contribute to happiness. Green spaces are biodiverse and offer benefits to people through ecosystem services, such as emissions absorptions, flood mitigation, and wildlife protection. Urban centers are known for being several degrees hotter than rural areas. One tree has the cooling effect of 10 air conditioners. At a time when temperatures are rising, trees and green spaces should be protected. The Greenbelt ecosystem offers a value of $3 billion annually through these processes that benefit the natural world and us. Our natural world is interconnected, and when elements are out of balance, there are many negative impacts. Protected lands mitigate the impacts of climate change. Having green spaces that are protected lessens the intensity and frequency of extreme weather, and they provide habitats for plants and animals. They also provide habitats for many endangered species, which helps prevent the primary cause of extinction, habitat loss.
According to Ontario.ca, Ontario's Greenbelt currently includes roughly 2 million acres of land, and it stretches 325 kilometers from the eastern end of the Oak Ridges Moraine close to Rice Lake, taking up 470,000 acres in the east, to the Niagara Escarpment, taking up 18,000 acres in the west. Parts of the Greenbelt in Dufferin, Simcoe, Grey, Wellington, Waterloo, Halton, York, Durham, Kawartha Lakes, Peterborough, Northumberland, Guelph, and Niagara. The Greenbelt surrounds the Golden Horseshoe, which includes Toronto, Hamilton, Peel, and Oshawa. The Golden Horseshoe is a horseshoe-shaped area in Ontario and is on the shoreline of Lake Ontario. The Golden Horseshoe stretches from Toronto to the Niagara River. The third part of the Greenbelt is the Greenbelt border. The Greenbelt is adjacent to the Rouge Urban National Park, the largest urban park in North America. The Rouge Urban National Park is home to 247 species of birds, 73 species of fish, 44 species of mammals, and 27 reptile/amphibian species. According to Greenbelt.ca, 2 million acres of protected land work together to provide us with fresh air, clean water, fantastic local food and drink, and world-class outdoor recreation and tourism experiences.
Bill 23 was a bill passed on November 28, 2022, created by the Ford government. It implements recommendations from the Ontario Housing Affordability Task Force report, and it's part of Ford's bigger target to build 1.5 million homes in 10 years by amending laws that protect the Greenbelt. Ford's government created the bill as it claims that environmental protections are a hurdle for affordable housing.
According to Denton's law firm, Bill 23 limited the role of conservation authorities when granting permissions to build on preserved lands, while also freezing fees that developers have to pay to build on these lands. These fees are normally used to pay for services, so with the payment of fees frozen, municipal governments will be underfunded. This will cause many harmful effects to the environment. According to the St. Catharines City Council, conservation authorities have less power and cannot regulate what developers do, leading to more destruction of rivers, wetlands, and stream valleys. If the lands are destroyed, life will also be destroyed and displaced. There have also been other legislative changes related to Bill 23. One of the acts amended by Bill 23 was the Conservation Authorities Act. Page 3 of Bill 23 mentions two factors when making decisions: the conservation of land and the possible effects on the control of pollution. On the same day as the first reading of Bill 23, the Ministry of Natural Resources and Forestry proposed some legislative changes. The changes removed the terms conservation of land and pollution from the Act.
Ontario has already proposed a plan to remove about 7,400 acres of land to build at least 50,000 homes on protected Greenbelt areas. This comes after Ford promised not to touch the Greenbelt.
But all my friends, I listen to you. You don't want me touching the Greenbelt, we won't touch the Greenbelt.
Bill 23 has spread a lot of controversy over the land that will be used. Environmentalists and opposing parties have argued that there is enough land to build houses on. Even Ontario's Housing Affordability Task Force also stated that enough land is available, but Ontario hasn't used its land effectively.
But why is the Greenbelt being proposed for development? In short, the housing crisis. We face a dilemma when it comes to Canada's housing crisis. How do we balance environmental protection and keep housing affordable? Ontario alone is estimated to need 1.5 million more homes to match the housing demand for the next decade. This increased housing demand has caused a nationwide spike in housing prices, with an increase of 60% since 2020. If we look at similar countries such as the UK and the US, we don't see the same kind of surge in housing prices. So what fuels this rise in housing demand?
The main contributor to the demand for houses comes from immigration. Over 2 million people are estimated to immigrate to Canada by 2026, with this number projected to continue increasing throughout future decades. Based on past immigration reports, we can estimate that 50% of these immigrants are likely to migrate to Ontario, with the majority moving to the Greater Toronto Area. There's just one issue. The Greater Toronto Area already accounts for 19.7% of Canada's population. The estimated immigration to this area will pressure the already overloaded housing demand. And it won't stop there. By 2041, immigrants will account for over 30% of Canada's total population. Ontario's housing demand is only increasing, and it doesn't look like it'll stop anytime soon. The Greenbelt Development Project is the Ford government's response to the housing crisis. Their proposal to build 50,000 new homes on Greenbelt land is a measure to alleviate the demand for housing.
We have a housing crisis. To reduce housing costs, 300,000 people are coming to our province. We need to build homes because everyone knows housing costs is through the roof. And so we need homes. We're going to build homes. We need to build 1.5 million homes.
We will open up the Greenbelt, not all of it. We're going to open a big chunk of it up, and we're going to start building.
Here's the thing. We already have enough space for all these houses. A study by the Alliance for a Livable Ontario found that no Greenbelt areas would need to be developed to reach the Ford government's plan of building 1.5 million homes in Ontario by 2031. These orange spaces indicate areas available for urban development in the Greater Golden Horseshoe area, a region with the highest housing demand in Ontario. Most municipalities in this area already have enough space to accommodate new houses, with very few needing any expansion at all. The Greater Golden Horseshoe area alone can accommodate over 2 million more homes, even more than the Ford government's plan to build 1.5 million homes in Ontario. The solution is simple. Fill urban areas with houses before expanding outwards. Urban expansion is not a necessary measure to ensure the current need for housing is met in Ontario.
The Greenbelt Development Project has a major risk: urban sprawl. Urban sprawl is the spread of cities into surrounding green spaces instead of densifying existing urban areas. You can usually see it on the outskirts of cities as low-density, single-family homes with roads connecting them to the main city area. But it's risky. These low-density developments often have poor public transport and rely on cars and roads, meaning more kilometers traveled, more emissions, and more air pollution. The average family living in a suburban home spends more energy on transportation than home utilities. Compare that to the standard family living in an urban home, and you can see that while energy consumption for utilities is similar, the energy spent on transportation is significantly lower. Suburban sprawl is also more expensive. In Halifax, the average suburban home costs over double in infrastructure, such as waste, roads, and policing, than the average urban home. The Greenbelt Development Plan will needlessly increase urban sprawl in Ontario and all of its negative effects.
And here's the kicker. The Greenbelt was made to prevent this from happening. The Greenbelt began with the Niagara Escarpment Planning and Development Act in 1973. At this time, the population was booming in the Greater Toronto Area, and urban development began expanding outwards. In response to this urban sprawl, the government protected almost 2,000 square kilometers of farmland where urban development was completely prohibited. The goal? To concentrate population density in the Toronto area and protect natural green spaces from urban development. However, by the late 1900s,
project, the Greater Golden Horseshoe area had become one of the fastest growing areas in North America, with the population increasing from 4.5 million to almost 8 million between 1991 and 2001. Urban development was increasingly expanding outwards, putting natural green spaces at great risk of being destroyed for housing developments. The premier at the time, Dalton McGuinty, highlighted the need to prevent urban sprawl into green spaces in his 2003 speech.
Wonderful Greenbelt. It's going to preserve it forever. It's 1.8 million acres. It's bigger than Prince Edward Island. To create more opportunities for Ontario families to enjoy the great outdoors and greenness. It's all right here, and we've done it. That's something that you can be proud of.
On February 28, 2005, the Greenbelt Act was passed, outlining over 8,000 square kilometers area, including the Niagara Escarpment and other protected areas called the Oak Ridges Moraine, where urban development was completely prohibited. Urban development would be forced to stay within certain boundaries, like this designated pocket for the Greater Toronto Area, all with one goal: to reduce urban sprawl. The Greenbelt Development Project defeats the entire purpose of the Greenbelt in the first place. The plan will create urban sprawl, despite the fact that Ontario already has enough space to fulfill projected housing demand. This means the Greenbelt, and all of its precious farmland, forests, and wetlands, is being put at risk for houses that aren't needed and for urban sprawl that will jeopardize Ontario.
There are many perspectives on the More Homes Built Faster Act, also known as Bill 23. The provincial government plans to develop the 15 parcels of land within the Greenbelt, totaling 7,400 acres. The Ford government passed Bill 23, which increases government power to allow the development of the Greenbelt land and exempt some fees that developers must pay to municipal governments and other authorities. At the provincial level, there is opposition to development within the Greenbelt. Leader of the New Democratic Party, Marit Stiles, inquired about how the Ford government planned which areas of the Greenbelt would be open for development.
He said the Greenbelt was formed by, and I'm going to quote him here, a bunch of staffers in a room with crayons and highlighters and randomly just went on a map. Speaker, if the Premier thinks the Greenbelt wasn't formed using a proper process, well, can he finally share his process for removing lands from the Greenbelt?
They sat there with a big map, and they literally got highlighters, Mr. Speaker, a bunch of staffers, and joking around, going up and down the roads.
It really makes you wonder, though, Speaker, if this government's process was a bunch of Conservative Party donors in a back room with crayons and highlighters and a map of the land they could buy up in order to turn a profit. Because the reality is that after the Conservatives were elected, 6 developers paid a combined $278 million for land that could not be developed within the Greenbelt. Then suddenly it was all removed. And Speaker, 5 of these developers have lobbying records revealing their connections back to the Conservative Party. No one would spend that kind of money if they didn't think it would be open for development and they could cash in. So again, to the Premier, how did this government decide which parcels of land would be removed from the Greenbelt?
The federal government opposes development on Greenbelt land. If the Impact Assessment Agency finds negative results from an environmental study of Rouge National Urban Park, the federal government could potentially halt development on the Greenbelt. We have an idea that is being put forward by the Ford government, that in order to build housing, we need to do that on the Greenbelt. We profoundly disagree with that idea, says Stephen Guilbeault, the Minister of Environment and Climate Change. Currently, Greenbelts are not protected federally, but he continues. If you're a developer thinking you've just struck gold and can start building tomorrow, know that the government could intervene. I've spoken to bankers who say they will need to take a long, hard look at the financial viability now that they know there could be delays or that certain projects could even be denied, says Stephen Guilbeault, the Minister of Environment and Climate Change Canada. Members of Parliament from Elmwood Transcona, Daniel Blakey, addresses the cause of the affordable housing crisis.
He likes to talk about housing, rightly so. Canadians are rightly angry about what's happening in the housing market. He likes to pretend that that's a product of the last 8 years. In 2004, a house that sold for $30,000 in Winnipeg would sell for $60,000 in 2007, and then well over $120,000 in 2012, Madam Speaker. Housing prices have been doubling in Canada for a long time. They doubled every few years under the last Harper Conservative government. So don't tell me that somehow this is a product just of the last little while. It is a problem, and it's a growing problem, but it's been growing for a long time. So how do you solve the problem around housing? Browbeating municipalities into approving building permits for houses that will be built that Canadians can't afford is not a solution. And developers have been building a lot of houses over the last number of years. You know who hasn't been building houses? Governments.
Some municipalities have vocalized their concerns about the provincial government's passing of Bill 23. Municipalities will incur costs associated with Greenbelt development. Bill 23 also includes changes to the master plans of cities across Ontario. Master plans have been contributed to over decades and have planned for growth and development while limiting sprawl. City of Ottawa Councillor Glenn Gower of Ward 6 Stittsville shared his views in the article 10 Reasons You Should Care About Ontario's New Housing Legislation. He has concerns about urban sprawl in the City of Ottawa, funding for infrastructure, reductions of parks and green space, as well as climate change. Mayor John Taylor of Newmarket is also concerned about urban sprawl and how new home development will impact the region's water systems. Developers, on the other hand, are very interested in developing the Greenbelt. Homes adjacent to parks and open spaces are valued higher than comparable properties. It makes sense that developers with investments in the Greenbelt are eager to build. 8 of the 15 Greenbelt development parcels were purchased after Doug Ford became the leader of the PC Party, and new requests from developers who want to build on currently protected land in the Greenbelt have been received since the province opened up 7,400 acres for development. The Minister of Municipal Affairs and Housing, Stephen Clark, has not stated whether he's open to more building in the protected area. Some see Ford's development plans and Clark's More Homes Built Faster Act as progress and the solution to the lack of housing. Supporters of Bill 23, like the Building Industry and Land Development Association, call the plan bold and innovative and believe it will help Ontario and the GTA overcome the critical lack of housing supply and reduce the cost of housing. According to Parks Canada, development on the Greenbelt could cause irreversible harm to the fauna, precise ecosystems, and agriculture. The Rouge National Urban Park alone is invaluable as the largest urban park in North America. The Greenbelt development parcels proposed within the Duffins Rouge Agricultural Preserve will have an impact on the surrounding area. Those who advocate hands off the Greenbelt do not believe Greenbelt development is necessary or worthwhile. Ontario's housing needs could be met without developing the Greenbelt. A public consultation held by the provincial government of 30,000 participants was conducted between November 4th and December 4th, 2022, and showed strong support for continued Greenbelt protection and broad opposition to renaming or removing any lands under the Greenbelt. The Mississauga's people have considered taking legal action to halt the changes to the Greenbelt proposed by the Ford government. The government failed to inform the Mississauga people of the changes to the Greenbelt, and this violates their duty to consult Indigenous groups about changes to their land or rights. Chief Laforme stated, "We didn't get notified until it was on the legislation floor. We need to be consulted on these things. We can't just go forward on what you think is best."
Ontario already has enough space to accommodate projected housing demand, making the Greenbelt Development Plan unnecessary.
Increasing urban sprawl and developing our Greenbelt is not a required action to take, and will only increase environmental issues within Ontario.
The Greenbelt and the municipalities that it is in have been greatly affected by Bill 23 and other related policies, which have effectively removed environmental protections.
Removing environmental protections will only continue to destroy land and life on the Greenbelt.
Greenbelt development, now, sets a precedent for more development on protected land, like the Greenbelt, in the future.
Land swaps undermine the Greenbelt's permanency, especially when the new land added to the outer periphery was already under protection.
Many have become interested in and concerned by this land use conflict in the province of Ontario. With many perspectives, it is clear that there are many stakeholders.
And by the way, folks, you know what's funny? I keep thinking about this Greenbelt. The previous government that put together this so-called Greenbelt, as they call it, they changed it 17 times to suit their developer buddies. I'm not doing that.
It's gorgeous.
That's where I got the best view.
Yeah, it's incredible. Like, I feel like I'm in heaven right now.